Hello! Today we are going to learn about the animals of the Arctic habitat. Our learning targets are to review what a habitat is, identify characteristics of Arctic habitats, demonstrate an understanding of the word adapted, and then write and draw about characteristics of Arctic habitats. Our key vocabulary for today are adapted, blubber, burrow, exposed, and tundra. Adapted is a verb, and adapted means changed over time to be better prepared for something or to be better able to do something. Over the years, animals in the Arctic have adapted to the cold. Blubber. Blubber is a noun, and blubber is a layer of fat that some animals have under their skin that keeps them warm. Walruses, seals, and polar bears have a layer of blubber under their skin. Burrow. Burrow is a verb, and it means to dig a hole or tunnel in the ground. Rabbits burrow underground to make their home. Exposed. Exposed is a verb, and it means not protected. So put out in the open with no covering. His bike, which he stored outside, became rusty because it was exposed to the rain. Tundra. Tundra is a noun, and a tundra is a treeless area where the ground is frozen and the temperature is very cold. Plants in the tundra do not grow very tall because it is very cold there. All right, so let's think about what we've already learned about animals and habitats. So Rattenborough is going to be showing us about the different habitats around the world. But I want you to tell me what were the 3 things that a habitat must have in order for living things to survive in it. Food, water, and shelter. Do you remember what Rattenborough's habitat looked like? Let's think about the shelter that Rattenborough's habitat had. He lived under the stairs, right? And what about his food? He ate trash or litter from humans. And what about water? Where did Rattenborough get his water from? Puddles or drains? Describe your habitat. Okay. So today we are going to be learning about a place called the Arctic. The Arctic is the region around the North Pole, which is not part of a single continent. In this region, there are areas of land called the Arctic tundra and a large body of water known as the Arctic Ocean. Today, you will hear about plants and animals that live in the Arctic region, both on land and in the water. So if we look at this map of the world, we've got North America, which up top there is Canada. Here's the United States where we live. And then you got South America, Africa, Europe, Asia, Australia, Antarctica. So when we are talking about the Arctic, we are talking about so you see this yellow line, that and up. So all of that space, the water and the land, is considered the Arctic tundra, okay? Well, the land is the Arctic tundra and the water is the Arctic Ocean. So that is where we are talking about. Remember our key vocabulary: adapted, blubber, burrow, exposed, and tundra. Listen carefully to find out which plants and animals live in the Arctic tundra and in the Arctic Ocean and how they survive. What do you see in that picture? Snow, ice, mountains. I don't see many trees or plants or animals, really. Hello again, Rattenborough the Adventurer here to take you on a tour of one of the coldest habitats on Earth, the Arctic tundra. In the tundra, there aren't very many plants. In fact, there are no trees at all, and a rat like me has to wear long johns or a warm layer of clothing under regular clothes and mittens. The wind here is incredibly strong, which makes the air feel even colder. The ground is frozen and nearly everything is covered in ice. In the winter, daylight lasts only a few hours, and at times the sun doesn't even come out at all. Some ice will be here in the summer, but in the summer, the top layer of ice melts so that the ground gets wet and muddy. The temperatures here are so low that most people and animals would freeze. All of these things make the Arctic tundra one of the least friendly habitats on Earth for plants and animals. Some plants and animals can only live in the Arctic tundra in the summer months when the temperature is warmer, but some are able to live there all year long. Arctic plants grow very close together and do not grow very tall, which keeps them from being blown away by the Arctic winds. These kinds of plants that can live in the Arctic tundra are mosses and different types of grasses. For once, I am one of the tallest things around. The animals that call the Arctic tundra habitat home all year round have adapted to the harsh conditions. When an animal has adapted to a habitat, that means it has changed over the years and now has special things that help it live in that habitat. For example, many animals in the Arctic tundra have adapted by growing heavy fur coats that help them stay warm in the cold temperatures. This creature is called a musk ox. The musk ox's long, shaggy coat has an extra layer of hair underneath that keeps him warm when the temperature is cold enough to turn a rat into a popsicle, and it sheds its extra coat of hair in the warmer summer months. So what do we do when it's cold outside? How do we adapt to the cold? What do we do? You might put on a coat, you might put on a hat, you might put on gloves, maybe a scarf, right? We bundle up. Musk oxen travel in herds so they can huddle together for added warmth. Their hooves are very wide to keep them from slipping on the snow and ice. In the winter, musk oxen use their sharp hooves to dig under the snow to find plants to eat. Here comes an animal I want to stay hidden from. This is a wolverine. Why do you think Rattenborough might want to stay hidden from the wolverine? Do you think that maybe a wolverine eats rats or other small animals? Maybe. The wolverine uses its fur coat to keep nice and warm. Like the musk ox, the wolverine has large paws to help it move across the snow that come in handy, help it move across the snow and that come in handy when it's trying to catch food. These animals are called caribou and are part of the deer family. They are sometimes called reindeer. These caribou are traveling in a huge herd, which helps to protect them against attack by other animals. Caribou hair traps air, which helps keep these animals warm. Their hooves change depending on the time of the year, so they can walk and run on mushy, wet terrain or on hard, icy terrain. Caribou also have antlers that help them dig for grass in the snow. That's really cool that their hooves change. I didn't know that. What do you see in this picture? This Arctic fox also has a coat that changes during the winter from a brown summer coat into this very thick white fur that helps the fox blend into its surroundings. The fur also covers its feet so it can walk on snow and ice. Thanks to the fox's fur, it can hide and sneak up on birds, hares, and rodents like me. The Arctic hare's white coat becomes much heavier in the winter. Its ears are smaller than those of other hares, meaning less of its body is exposed to the cold. When something is exposed, it's not protected and it is out in the open with nothing covering it. In the Arctic, any part of your body that is exposed would be cold. In other words, this is no place for critters with long dangly ears unless they have long dangly earmuffs to keep those ears from freezing. The hare's white color also helps it hide in the snow, and its back feet are wide and large, like small snowshoes, so it can run fast in the snow. There are other kinds of habitats in the Arctic besides the tundra, and different kinds of plants and animals live in these other habitats. The Arctic Ocean is a habitat rich in sea life and animals that rely on the sea for their food. The water is so cold in the Arctic Ocean that most living creatures would be able to stay alive only a few minutes in it. Animals such as the walrus call the Arctic Ocean home. These huge creatures just love the icy water and can swim around for a long period of time. Walruses have adapted to life in the Arctic Ocean by storing blubber under their skin. Blubber is a layer of fat that some animals have under their skin that keeps them warm. Blubber prevents heat from escaping their bodies. Walruses also have long teeth called tusks, which they use almost like arms to pull themselves up out of the water and onto the ice. I didn't know that that's what they use them for. Look at these cute animals. These are seals. Seals have blubber under their skin just like walruses. Some types of seals are born covered with a layer of white fur to keep them warm until they develop blubber. Seals are incredible swimmers. Like fish and walruses, seals don't have arms and legs. Instead, seals have flippers, and they swim by wiggling their bodies from side to side, using their flippers to steer. They swim very fast, so they catch plenty of tasty fish. Thankfully, they don't eat rats. Here comes a polar bear. Look out. Let's hide behind this rock, and I'll tell you all about this amazing creature. The polar bear is perhaps the best known of all animals living around the Arctic Ocean. These astonishing animals have adapted incredibly well to the harsh Arctic habitat. Polar bears are the largest bears in the world. Male polar bears weigh up to 1,700 pounds. That's probably heavier than everyone in your class put together, including your teacher. And polar bears have grown up to 10 feet from head to toe. Yikes! Polar bears are covered with a heavy coat made up of 2 layers of fur, and they have a layer of blubber under their skin. Their ears and tails are very small, so that not too much of their bodies are exposed to the cold weather. What does exposed mean again? Out in the open. Okay, and not protected. It's a good thing they have all that fur and blubber and sharp claws because polar bears spend most of their life living on sea ice or chunks of ice that float in the Arctic Ocean. Some polar bears take a dip in the icy Arctic water to swim from one chunk of ice to another, and they have webbed paws, sort of like duck feet, to help them swim. They use those mighty paws to hunt their favorite food, seals. Like all living things, polar bears need water to survive, and they get that water from melted snow and ice. Even though adult polar bears spend most of their time living on sea ice, polar bear babies or cubs are born on land. Their mothers, female polar bears, burrow in the snow and make a den. That means they dig a hole in the snow and make a shelter. They will then hide in the den while they have their babies. They stay in their dens with their young all winter, and in the spring they finally come out. The cubs stay with their mothers for almost 2 years to learn hunting and survival skills before leaving home. Now, speaking of home, I really must go. It's absolutely frigid or very, very cold here, and my whisker warmers are just not doing the job. We've learned a lot about the Arctic habitat and the animals that have managed to adapt and survive here. I think our next stop should be somewhere warmer, don't you? Remember that even habitats are as extremely cold as the Arctic tundra and Arctic Ocean can be full of life. Now, it's not easy for me to stay hidden in all this snow, and I can barely move with all these clothes on, so I'm getting out of here before I get spotted by that Arctic fox. See you next time. Okay, it is time for our comprehension questions and word work. You need to take a minute to get up and wiggle. Go ahead and do that. All right. What is the Arctic tundra habitat like? What's it like? What's the temperature like? It's really, really cold and windy. And what does the ground look like? It's covered in ice and snow in the winter, and then during the summer, the top layer of ice melts and the ground gets wet and muddy, right? Are there many trees there? No. And we also learned that there's very little sunlight. What about the ocean habitat, the Arctic Ocean habitat? The water's really cold. It's too cold for many of the living creatures to live there for very long. And it's covered with a lot of ice. What kind of plants grow in the tundra? Mosses and grasses, right? And how have they adapted to the Arctic tundra? Think about grass and moss. Are they very tall? No. They grow close together and low to the ground to stay out of the wind, right? How have walruses, seals, and polar bears adapted to keep warm? What is it that they have? Blubber, and blubber is a layer of fat. Okay, how have walruses adapted so that they can move from the water of the Arctic Ocean onto the ice and near the Arctic Ocean? What do they use? This was something that I didn't know before I read this. They use their tusks, right? And they stick them into the ice and they pull themselves up. Those must be really, really strong because I'm sure that a walrus is not light. How have polar bears adapted to live near the Arctic Ocean? So we said that they have blubber. What else did we learn about? They had 2 layers of fur. They had small ears and tail so that not too much of them are exposed. They've got sharp claws and webbed paws. Why is it important for living creatures to adapt to the environment in which they live? Because they need to be able to survive, right? They need to be able to survive the climate, which means the temperature, and they need to be able to find food and water and shelter, because otherwise they won't be able to live. So is the Arctic a good place for the polar bear to live? Yeah. Why? Because the polar bear, it's able to keep warm, it's able to find food, and it's able to find shelter and water, right? Okay, so in the read aloud you heard the animals that call the Arctic tundra habitat a home all year round have adapted to the harsh conditions. Say the word adapted with me. Adapted. Can you whisper it? Adapted. Can you say it in a monster voice? Adapted. Adapted means changed over time to be better prepared for or better able to do something. The animals in the harsh Arctic habitat have adapted to very cold weather. All right, so I'm going to show you some images of certain animals that you learned about today. Tell me some of the ways that each animal has adapted to the Arctic habitat. Be sure to use the word adapted in your answer. So here is the Arctic hare. How has the Arctic hare adapted to the Arctic? It has white fur, so it blends in with the snow. Its fur gets thicker in the winter. What about its ears? They're shorter, right? So that there's less of them exposed to the cold. Its back feet are wide and large, which help it run fast on the snow. Okay, what about the caribou? How do the caribou adapt for the Arctic? They travel in a large group so that they can gather together, they can get some more heat, and it also protects them from predators. They have thick hair that traps air, allowing them to stay warm. What about their hooves? I think this part's really cool. Their hooves change along with the changing land, and their antlers help them dig for grass in the snow. What about this one? How about the Arctic fox? How does the Arctic fox adapt? It has a coat that changes color, right? It's white during the winter, so it blends in with the snow, and then it gets like brown in the summer part when it's more muddy. And it also has fur on its feet so that it can walk on the snow and on the ice. Okay, let's make sure that we hit our learning targets. We reviewed what a habitat is. We identified characteristics of the Arctic habitats. We demonstrated an understanding of the word adapted. And then in a little while, you're going to write and draw about characteristics of the Arctic habitat. All right, guys, awesome job.